Agile methods, as we know, emphasize frequent integration, frequent deployment, frequent releases, and the practices that we are going to see in this segment, in each in its own way, emphasize these goals. The first one, which is not universally practiced but which you find recommended in extreme programming, is the idea that only one pair integrates code at a time. So you can view it as a principle as much as a practice, but the idea is that in this context in which we have collective code ownership and various developers or pairs of developers proceed in parallel, we want to avoid conflict, so only one pair is permitted to integrate its changes at any given time. More fundamental is the idea of continuous integration. So it's the combination of frequent releases, which we're going to see now, with relentless testing. So an XP team tests and tests and tests again all the time. It's testing really that drives the process, as we're going to see in the next segment. And the idea is to keep system fully integrated at all times, hence very frequent, also known as continuous integrations. How frequent, that's what we're going to see next. So rather than weekly or daily builds, the idea with taking to the extreme is to build a system several times a day with a number of benefits, such as easier integration because little has changed, the team learns more quickly, you minimize unexpected interactions, and problematic code is more likely to be fixed because more eyes see it sooner, and duplication also, which is of course a very bad thing in software. Any occurrence of copy-paste is detrimental to the future of the software. Such duplication is going to be detected earlier and hence easier to eliminate. So the general idea is to release early and often. So we're talking, of course, here about two different things. Integration is internal to the team and should, in the extreme programming view, occur as often as possible. Release is something that's going to be visible to the outside, and here too we want to release early and often, to use the famous joke about voting in Chicago. This of course follows from the rejection of big upfront design and big upfront requirements. If you are going to have a process that is continuous, in which you do the requirements and the design as you go, well, the best way to see, in fact the only way to see that you're actually meeting the customer's needs, is to produce frequent releases. In XP teams, the idea is also of small releases. So they are small according to this discussion by Ron Jeffries, which I'm quoting pretty literally here. There are two notions of small. First, we release running testing software at every iteration so that the customer can use it for any purpose, including actual use. So this is pretty risky, of course. And it's also frequent as well. For example, web projects may need to release as often as daily. Deployment should be incremental too, so the functionality should be deployed gradually, avoiding big bang deployment. Many projects run into this typical pitfall of working very hard for weeks or months and then releasing the entire system. And then of course in a complex system there's a good likelihood that something somewhere, even a small thing, will go wrong and will hamper the entire deployment. Well, by having incremental deployment when you release functionality step by step is a guard against such problems. Of course, it's not always possible. If you are launching a rocket, well, the software must work the day you launch it. If you're introducing the euro in 2001, well, you'd better have everything ready the day the new ATMs go into operation. But in many projects, especially in projects in which the software gets updated regularly, it's possible to have this incremental deployment. In fact, some projects practice daily deployment, with the idea that, of course, if anything doesn't work, the developer who is responsible for that part is going to have to come back and work until it works again. Some authors, like Shore, advocate the 10-minute build, This is a kind of rule of thumb to make sure that integration proceeds smoothly. So the rule is that it should be possible to integrate everything, to build everything in 10 minutes or less, and this includes lots of stuff: compiling, running the test, registry settings, and so on. And the idea is that if it takes more than 10 minutes, then the project is too big and should be split into sub-projects. Now, how long should be the release cycles? Well, here, as we have already seen, the methods and the individual projects vary. Kenbeck advocates a weekly cycle. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of the steps that he advocates. I'll leave them for you to read if you're interested, because this is somewhat superseded by the more detailed steps and advice that we've seen in connection with Scrum, with the Scrum planning meeting and review meeting. This was more detailed, and in particular in its distribution of roles between the product owner and the team. What's interesting here is the emphasis that Beck makes on the period of 1 week, and he says the nice thing about a week is that everyone is focused on having the test run on Friday. So he really means a calendar week. So if you get to Wednesday and it's clear that the test won't be running, you still have time to choose the most valuable stories, remove the others, and complete those that you have chosen. Ken Beck also advocates for a quarterly cycle with a review of the high-level structure at that stage. And as the XP authors emphasize, this often corresponds to the financial reporting practices of many companies. It's also a period which is chosen as being large enough not to interfere with current concerns, and also short enough to allow frequent questioning of the practices in the CMMI style of a self-improving process. So what we've seen in this third segment of the practices lecture is that Agile methods in many different ways promote frequent release cycles and continuous integration, and that there are a number of variants such as weekly, quarterly, and in between. And of course, each project should choose for itself what exact period suits its needs best.